Have you ever found yourself in that just completely paralyzing, universally dreaded moment right after the initial handshake?
The post-hello void.
Yeah, the void. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're standing there inches away from a brand new human being.
Yeah.
You've just deployed the standard, hello, nice to meet you, and they've replied with the exact same thing, and then
And then the ground just opens up beneath you.
exactly, your brain completely flatlines, the silence stretches out, it's thick, it's suffocating. You suddenly become, like, hyper aware of your own hands. You're taking a sip of a drink you don't even want just to justify your physical existence in that space.
Right, you need a prop to hide behind.
You do, because you are entirely unsure what to ask next, and the sheer weight of trying to manufacture a genuine connection out of thin air feels, I mean, it feels heavy enough to crush a diamond.
It's an immense cognitive load.
It really is. And that is exactly why we're here. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a really fascinating piece of source material today. It's a transcript from an educational series, specifically an installment designated EP08 Hobbies.
Which features a dialogue between two characters, Alex and Sophia.
Right. Now, on its surface, if you just glance at this text, it's structured as a basic framework for conversational English. But, and this is why I was so excited to dig into this with you, if we peel back the layers, what we actually have here is a meticulously constructed blueprint for human connection.
It really is. It's deceptively simple.
Deceptively simple is the perfect way to phrase it. So our mission today is to reverse engineer this transcript. We're going to isolate the specific linguistic tools, the unspoken social contracts, and, the psychological pivots that allow us to cross that terrifying void.
To find shared ground.
Exactly. To successfully transition an interaction from two strangers just sharing oxygen in a room to two people actually connecting.
And it is a remarkable document when you view it through the lens of social mechanics rather than just vocabulary. What we're really analyzing here is the architecture of psychological safety. We're looking at the what and the why of conversational bridge building.
Building the bridge while you're walking on it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
How do human beings use syntax and pacing to signal that they are not a threat? How do we use inquiry to establish trust? The interaction between Alex and Sophia provides this incredibly clean, controlled environment to study these phenomena.
Because it strips away all the background noise.
Right. It strips away the noise of a real-world cocktail party or a chaotic networking event, leaving us with just the raw schematic of how a relationship is initiated.
And what strikes me immediately when looking at the source text is how it handles the very beginning of that initiation. Sophia opens the dialogue by articulating that exact paralysis we just talked about. She admits that while she genuinely loves meeting new people, she frequently stalls out right after saying hello. She just doesn't know where to steer the ship.
She names the void.
She does. And there's a crucial, really fascinating detail she mentions here. She references surviving travel emergencies in their previous installment, EP07, and explicitly states that now she is ready for some fun. That pivot from a crisis to a desire for joy, it feels like a massive psychological shift.
It is a fundamental shift, and it speaks volumes about the different ways human beings form attachments. In that prior scenario, the travel emergency, you are dealing with a shared crisis. Maybe you're stuck at an airport, or you've lost your luggage.
You're in survival mode.
Exactly. When humans experience a shared challenge, it absolutely bonds them. Psychologists refer to this as stress bonding or trauma bonding. The heightened adrenaline, the influx of cortisol, the mutual enemy of a canceled flight, it forces immediate cooperation.
You become comrades in arms against the airline.
You do. But Sophia's instinct here is incredibly astute. She recognizes that a bond forged in the fires of a travel emergency is often situational, and ultimately, it's brittle.
Right, because if you run into that same airport comrade 3 weeks later at a grocery store, you might have absolutely nothing to say to them.
Nothing at all.
The crisis is over, the cortisol has faded, so the foundation of the relationship just evaporates.
Precisely. Surviving stress is a catalyst, but it is not a foundation for a lasting relationship. Sophia's insistence that she is ready for some fun really highlights the necessity of positive shared experiences. For a connection to become a resilient long-term friendship, it has to pivot towards shared joy.
But getting to that joy requires crossing that void.
Yes, and the reason that blank space is so terrifying is due to the cognitive load it places on us. In that moment of silence, you are facing infinite conversational possibilities. You could talk about the weather, existential philosophy, the local sports team, or the architecture of the building you're standing in.
This is too much data.
It's way too much. And as we know from behavioral economics, specifically the paradox of choice, when human beings are confronted with infinite options, we don't feel liberated. We experience severe decision paralysis. The brain simply freezes under the computational weight of having to choose the correct conversational path.
I think we've all felt that cognitive overload. It's like standing in front of a menu at a diner with 1,000 items and the waiter's just staring at you. You just panic and order a water.
That's a perfect analogy.
So the question becomes, how do we narrow the menu? How do we reduce that cognitive load for ourselves and for the listener? In the script, Alex provides a masterful solution. He introduces the topic of hobbies and free time. He essentially throws out a lifeline. Instead of asking about someone's career, he asks about their passions.
And the distinction between those two inquiries is profound. Historically, identity was inextricably linked to labor. You were the blacksmith, you were the farmer, your job was your surname.
Right. Baker, Smith, Cooper.
Exactly. But in our modern, often digitized economy, people increasingly seek to decouple their intrinsic value from their 9-to-5 output. When you ask a new acquaintance, what do you do for work? You are immediately injecting status, hierarchy, and potential economic anxiety into a very fragile new interaction.
You're triggering their professional defense mechanisms.
You are.
I completely agree with that. It instantly feels evaluative. You can almost see the person calculating, is my job impressive enough for this person? Do they make more money than me? It creates this invisible ladder in the room. But when Alex suggests pivoting to hobbies, specifically using the questions, what do you like to do in your free time? Or do you have any hobbies? He completely dismantles that ladder.
He does. He is shifting the conversation from the realm of obligation to the realm of autonomy. By asking about free time, you are asking the person to reveal who they are when no one is paying them to be someone.
I love that. Who are you when you aren't on the clock?
It's an inherently democratizing question. Furthermore, if we look at the structure of the questions themselves, they are elegantly open-ended. A closed-ended question like, are you from around here, can be answered with a binary yes or no.
Which effectively kills the momentum.
Right. It forces you to invent another question immediately. An open-ended inquiry about free time allows the responder to dictate the terms of engagement. They have complete agency over how much of their inner life they wish to expose.
Let's look at the specific examples of these inner lives that the script provides, because the range of hobbies Alex and Sophia discuss is fascinating. Sophia brings up hiking and taking photos. Alex mentions cooking and playing guitar. They also weave in yoga and classic movies as potential answers. When you look at that list, it's not just a random assortment of pastimes. It reads like a menu of identity signaling.
That is exactly what it is. Choosing to share a specific hobby with a stranger is a highly curated act of self-presentation. Think of Irving Goffman's sociological theories on the presentation of self in everyday life. We are essentially building an avatar in the mind of our conversational partner.
We're handing them our character sheet.
Yes. If you tell a stranger that your passion is hiking, you aren't just communicating a preference for walking up inclines. You are signaling a host of associated values. A desire to disconnect from screens, an appreciation for the natural world, physical vitality, perhaps a tolerance for solitude and endurance.
And if you say you're into classic movies, you're signaling something entirely different. You're projecting intellectualism, an appreciation for historical narrative, and perhaps a patience for pacing that is much slower than modern social media algorithms. You're signaling an analytical mindset.
Exactly. Cooking signals a nurturing disposition, a groundedness in the physical alchemy of ingredients. Playing the guitar signals a commitment to creative expression and the discipline required to master an instrument. Yoga signals a pursuit of mindfulness and internal equilibrium in a very chaotic world.
It covers all the bases.
It does. By presenting this diverse spectrum, spanning the active, the artistic, the domestic, and the analytical sari, the script subtly acknowledges that our free time is the primary canvas upon which we paint our true identities. When you ask someone about their hobby, you are essentially asking, which canvas would you like to show me?
But the nuance doesn't stop at the choice of the hobby itself. The script gets incredibly granular about the actual lexicon used to describe these passions. Alex explicitly teaches Sophia to move away from the basic construction of, I like. Instead, he introduces phrases like, I'm a big fan of, And crucially, I'm into. So I'm into yoga or I'm into classic movies. I want to pause here because this phrasing feels like a masterstroke of cognitive linguistics.
It absolutely is. If we lean on the work of linguists like George Lakoff regarding how we use metaphors we live by, the phrase "I am into" reveals a deeply spatial understanding of our relationship with our passions.
A spatial understanding. Walk me through that.
Imagine the hobby, whether it's yoga or guitar, not as an activity, but as a physical space, a room or an environment. When you say, "I like yoga," you are standing outside of that room, observing it from a distance, and acknowledging that it brings you passive pleasure. You are a consumer of it.
Oh, I see. But when you say I am into yoga, you are fundamentally altering your position relative to the activity. You are indicating that you have stepped across the threshold. You are inside the room. You are immersed in the environment, wrapped up in the culture of it. It's an active state of being rather than a passive
Yeah.
state of consumption.
Precisely. It implies a melding of the activity with your core identity. And what's particularly telling is Alex's meta-commentary in the script. He specifically points out to Sophia that phrasing her interests this way sounds very natural. The emphasis on natural phrasing is paramount when we are trying to establish intimacy.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I often wonder why we place such a premium on casual phrasing in these moments. I'll push back a bit here. Couldn't one argue that using colloquialisms like "I'm into" is just linguistic laziness? Why wouldn't we want to be as articulate and formal as possible when making a first impression? Shouldn't we say, "I possess a deep affinity for the practice of yoga"?
You could, but you would likely alienate the person standing right across from you. Formal language is an excellent tool for maintaining boundaries. We use it in courtrooms, in academic papers, and in corporate negotiations specifically because it creates a sterile, objective distance between the participants. It is polite, but it is cold.
It keeps people at arm's length.
Exactly. When we are attempting to bridge the gap between strangers and forge a genuine connection, distance is the enemy. Colloquialisms, idioms, and relaxed syntax serve as the friction that generates social warmth. When you use a casual phrase like "I'm into," you are implicitly lowering your own armor.
You're disarming yourself.
Yes, you are sending a subconscious signal to the other person. I am comfortable enough with you to speak informally. You are safe here. It invites them to drop their own armor in response.
That makes perfect sense. The informality is the very mechanism of vulnerability. So let's say we've navigated the void, we've asked the right open-ended question, and the other person has used this natural, immersive language to reveal their avatar. They've told us what room they are standing in. The script then introduces the optimal scenario. Sophia asks, what if the other person likes the same thing as me? And Alex provides the enthusiastic responses, "Me too," or "I love that too." Let's look at the immense power of discovering a common interest.
The power of the Me Too moment is rooted deep in our evolutionary biology. Human beings are apex social creatures, and our survival has historically depended entirely on our ability to successfully integrate into an in-group.
We needed the tribe to survive the winter.
Exactly. Our brains are constantly, subconsciously scanning our environment, categorizing the people we meet. When someone reveals that they share a specific, nuanced passion with you, your brain experiences a jolt of recognition. It registers them not just as a safe entity, but as a member of your tribe.
It's an immediate dopamine shortcut. You bypass months of vetting. You go from being two isolated individuals cautiously observing each other to being a coalition of two who uniquely understand the transcendent peace of a mountain trail or the intricate storytelling of a 1940s noir film. It's an instantaneous alignment of worldviews.
It is. But what elevates this script from a basic exchange to a masterclass in conversation is what Alex suggests doing next. He doesn't just let the conversation rest on the shared high five of "Me too," he introduces a conversational extender. He advises asking, "How long have you been doing that?"
That question is brilliant.
Yeah.
And it works so well because it fundamentally changes the temporal dimension of the conversation.
Exactly. When you are discussing a shared hobby, you are rooted in the present state. You both currently like hiking, but when you ask "How long have you been doing that?" you are inviting the person to step out of the present and into their autobiography. You are asking for their origin story.
You are tapping into narrative psychology. We are, at our core, storytelling animals. When you ask for the timeline of a passion, you aren't just getting data. You are giving them permission to reminisce. They might take you back to a childhood camping trip with their grandfather, or a period of profound burnout in their 20s where they discovered yoga as a lifeline. You are asking, when did this become a pillar of your identity?
And it rapidly deepens the intimacy of the interaction without crossing the line into being overly intrusive because the vulnerability is safely anchored to the topic of the hobby.
It's a remarkably elegant way to invite depth. You are providing the scaffolding for them to share their history. But as we know, the real world rarely adheres to best-case scenarios. We have to address the alternative path. What happens when you initiate this inquiry, they reveal their passion, and you realize you have absolutely zero common ground?
The conversational mismatch.
Right. The script sets up a neat alignment, but what if you ask about their free time, and they look you dead in the eye and say, I am deeply into competitive Victorian mouse taxidermy, and you've never in your life considered stuffing a rodent? I actually had a conversation remarkably similar to this once at a gallery opening.
Oh, really?
Yes, I was trapped next to a guy who collected historical veterinary instruments. I felt that immediate spike of panic. My brain was screaming, abort, you have no data on this topic, find an exit. But this is exactly where the source material provides what I consider the ultimate conversational cheat code. It's the empathetic pivot.
How did you handle the veterinary instrument collector? Did you employ the strategy Alex outlines here?
I essentially did, mostly out of sheer desperation at the time.
Yeah.
In the script, Alex says that when you don't know much about the hobby, you simply say, that sounds interesting, tell me more about it. I turned to this guy and basically said, I know absolutely nothing about that world. Walk me through it. What makes a 19th century scalpel interesting to you? And the transformation was unbelievable. He just lit up. I didn't have to pretend to be an expert. My ignorance wasn't a liability. It was the fuel for the rest of the conversation.
That is the perfect real-world application of the empathetic pivot. There is a profound psychological release in admitting what you don't know, provided it is accompanied by genuine curiosity. By saying, tell me more about it, you are granting the other person the floor to be the undisputed expert. You are validating their specialized knowledge.
It strokes their ego, but in the most constructive, healthy way possible. People love feeling competent and they love being heard.
Furthermore, it completely removes the cognitive burden from your shoulders. You don't have to frantically search your memory banks for a tangential fact to prove you belong in the conversation. You just have to employ active listening. The script actually provides a phenomenal example of this regarding travel. It suggests that if someone mentions they enjoy traveling, you shouldn't just ask where they went last. You should ask, what's your favorite place you've ever visited?
I want to dissect that specific word, favorite, because asking, where did you go on your last trip versus what is your favorite place yields two drastically different psychological outcomes.
They are worlds apart. If you ask about their last trip, you are asking for a chronological fact. They might have just returned from a grueling, delayed business trip to a rainy city where they ate terrible hotel food. You are forcing them to recall a potentially negative or mundane experience.
Or you might accidentally prompt a rant about lost luggage.
Exactly. But when you ask for their favorite place, you are acting as a curator of their positive affect. You are forcing their brain to scan their entire autobiographical database, bypass the mundane, and retrieve a memory of peak happiness or profound awe.
And as they recount that memory, maybe it's standing on a cliff in Santorini or eating street food in Bangkok, they are actively reliving those emotions. Their facial expressions will soften, their vocal cadence will become more animated, and they will physically embody that past joy right there in the present moment.
This is where the concept of the halo effect comes into play. Because you are the one who prompted this retrieval of a peak emotional state, their brain will subconsciously associate those warm, positive feelings with you. You become the beneficiary of their favorite memory. It is a highly effective way to build rapport when you lack a shared interest.
It's essentially conversational alchemy. You are turning your own lack of knowledge into their joy. So let's assume we've executed this perfectly. We've either bonded over a shared love of classic film, or we've eagerly listened to them explain the intricacies of antique veterinary tools. And we've genuinely enjoyed the interaction. We want to see this person again. We need to transition from the present interaction to future potential. This brings us to part 3 of the script. Making plans.
The transition.
Right. Sophia asks for the mechanism to do this, and the phrase provided is, do you want to hang out sometime? I want to spend a good amount of time analyzing the sociological weight of the phrase, hang out.
It is arguably the most critical phrase in modern social choreography. To understand its utility, we have to look at what it replaced. Historically, extending an invitation to a new acquaintance involved highly structured proposals. Would you care to join me for dinner? Or shall we schedule a meeting for coffee next Tuesday? Those structured invitations carry an immense amount of implicit pressure. They are fraught with expectations regarding time, financial expenditure, and, quite frankly, performance.
Right. A date implies romantic escalation and potential rejection. A meeting implies professional transaction and the need to be on. Both require a high threshold of existing trust to agree to. But hanging out operates at an entirely different frequency.
Hanging out is a masterpiece of plausible deniability. It implies unstructured, fluid, and low-stakes time spent in proximity to one another. You aren't committing to a three-course meal where you have to sustain eye contact for 2 hours. You could be grabbing a coffee and walking around a park or sitting on a couch listening to music. The ambiguity is the feature, not a bug. It signals to the other person, I enjoy your company and I would like to share space with you, but I am placing absolutely zero demands on you regarding the outcome of that time.
I'll play devil's advocate for a second, though. Doesn't that exact ambiguity sometimes create its own brand of anxiety? I know plenty of people who agonize over the phrase hanging out because the lack of structure means they don't know what the rules of engagement are. Are we dating? Are we just networking? Should I dress up? The lack of a clear container can be dizzying.
That is a very valid critique. The ambiguity of hanging out shifts the anxiety from the invitation phase to the execution phase. However, in the context of merely securing the second interaction, which is what Sophia is trying to do here, it drastically lowers the barrier to entry. It makes it incredibly easy for the other person to say yes because they aren't agreeing to a high-pressure scenario. They are just agreeing to casual proximity.
And to facilitate this future proximity, the script provides very specific suggestions for the modern exchange of calling cards. It doesn't suggest asking for a business card. Alex suggests asking, are you on Instagram or can I have your WhatsApp? I find the inclusion of these two specific digital platforms fascinating because they represent two entirely different philosophies of connection.
They map perfectly onto the spectrum of intimacy. Asking for someone's Instagram handle is a brilliant, low-friction request. Instagram operates primarily on asynchronous visual communication. It is a curated gallery of a person's life. By asking for their Instagram, you're essentially saying, allow me to quietly observe your avatar. It provides a platform for what sociologists call ambient awareness or a soft-tie relationship.
Exactly. It allows for a slow, non-demanding build. I can follow you today, and a week from now when you post a picture of your hiking trip, I can double-tap it or leave a small comment. I am maintaining a presence in your digital periphery without demanding your immediate attention. It's the conversational equivalent of waving from across the street.
WhatsApp, conversely, is the digital inner sanctum. It is fundamentally synchronous, text-based, and highly direct. A WhatsApp message vibrates in your pocket. It demands a real-time response. It bypasses the curated gallery and goes straight to the individual. By offering these two distinct options, the script is providing tools to calibrate the intensity of the follow-up based on how well the initial conversation went. If it was a pleasant but brief chat, Instagram is the safer bet. If you spend an hour deeply connecting over a shared passion, asking for WhatsApp is the logical escalation.
But as with all human endeavors, we must account for the possibility of failure, or at least polite refusal. We to prepare for the exit. Sophia brings up a highly pragmatic concern at the end of the script, and if they are busy, meaning, what if you extend the invitation to hang out and they deflect? Alex's prescribed response is beautifully simple. No problem, maybe next time. And he appends it with the reminder, it's always good to be polite. Let's unpack the psychological preservation happening in this tiny exchange.
This is where emotional intelligence becomes paramount. Social rejection, even in its mildest form, like someone claiming to be too busy to grab a coffee, triggers a legitimate stress response in the human brain. Functional MRI scans show that social rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Our instinct, when bruised in this way, is often defensive. We might act visibly hurt. We might become passive-aggressive, or we might push harder to force a yes, which only alienates the person further.
Right. Our bruised ego wants to make the other person feel the discomfort we are feeling. But Alex's script provides a graceful exit ramp that overrides that biological impulse.
By immediately responding with, no problem, maybe next time, you accomplish several critical things simultaneously. First, you regulate your own emotional response by relying on a pre-planned, polite script. Second, and more importantly, you completely absolve the other person of any guilt. You are signaling that their boundary has been respected without friction.
You are preserving the relationship by refusing to make it awkward. And this taps into the psychological principle of the recency effect, doesn't it? The idea that we disproportionately remember the end of an experience.
Precisely. The recency effect dictates that an individual's final impression of an interaction heavily colors their overall memory of it. If you had a wonderful 20-minute conversation about classic movies, but it ended with you looking visibly offended when they said they were too busy to hang out, they will walk away remembering the awkwardness, not the connection. By deploying a graceful, pressure-free exit like maybe next time, you leave the door perpetually open. You ensure that their final memory of you is that of a secure, reasonable, and relaxed individual. They might genuinely be busy this week, but because you handled the exit so well, they will be much more receptive if you cross paths again.
It's the perfect soft landing for what could otherwise be a turbulent maneuver. What an absolutely staggering journey we've taken just by analyzing a few pages of dialogue. We started staring into the terrifying, silent void of a new introduction, and we've mapped out the entire psychological architecture required to build a bridge across it. To summarize the mechanics we've extracted today, we learned how to reduce cognitive load by pivoting to passions. We explored the linguistic power of claiming space with immersive phrases like, "I'm into." We unpacked the dopamine loops of common interests and the empathetic alchemy of asking, "Tell me more about it." And finally, we decoded the low-stakes sociology of hanging out and the emotional intelligence of the graceful exit.
The underlying truth to take away from this analysis is that the desire to be witnessed, to share our curated joys, and to connect without the burden of heavy expectations is a universal human condition. Whether you are navigating a corporate networking event, attempting to integrate into a new city, or simply trying to make small talk with a stranger at a gallery opening, the mechanics of psychological safety remain identical.
Absolutely identical. Now, as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave you, the listener, with something a bit provocative to chew on. We spent this entire time talking about how to survive the real-time, face-to-face awkwardness of building a connection. But I want you to consider this. In an era where we rely so heavily on asynchronous communication, where we curate our lives on Instagram, where we can backspace and edit our text messages before sending them, where we expect every interaction to be optimized, are we slowly losing the biological muscle required to survive the void? Are we becoming so terrified of the blank space after hello because we no longer have a digital search bar to bail us out in real life? It's something to think about the next time you feel that panic setting in. And finally, I wanted to deliver the exact homework that Alex and Sophia assigned at the end of their script. I am asking you directly, what are you into? What is your defining passion? I want you to really mull over how you would explain the depths of that hobby to a complete stranger without relying on a photo or a link. Think about how you would use the very tools we discussed today to confidently invite someone into your world. Leave with that thought as you step back out into the wild. Until next time, keep exploring the hidden depths of the everyday.